What's up, Buckeye? I'm Doug.
I'm Eric.
We are Danny in the garage, and we are in the happiest place on the planet. That's right. Today we are in the U-Pull Junkyard, and we're going to be talking about one of our absolute favorite vehicles, the Jeep Cherokee XJ. A little bit ago, we did a WJ Junkyard starter kit. That was parts that you can pull off of other WJs or other vehicles to upgrade your WJ, which is a Jeep Grand Cherokee, if you don't know, looking a lot like this old girl. Anyway, point being, that video did well, so we're going to do it on the XJ today. We're going to show you all the things you can pull that are factory upgrades. And with the XJ, what's cool is there's a bunch of stuff you can pull off other Mopar vehicles, Dodges, off GM vehicles and Fords to upgrade, to lift, to make more betterer your XJ Cherokee. Let's get into her. One of the most important things to understand about the XJ is that there are two very distinct versions of the XJ. They made it from 1984 to 2001, but in 1997 they did a major facelift. Now what you're looking at here is one of the older styles. Now they stopped putting the year on, so we have to guesstimate, but Eric and I believe this is probably an early 90s version. If you know XJs, this is an older style decal. Additionally, the seats will be a dead giveaway. I'll show you some newer seats later on, but these real thin ones like this are older. They've got, there you go, just the slide feature on them like that. Now, a lot of parts from the newer ones are upgrades for these older ones. Additionally, these door panels. I mean, if you look at it, you can look at it and be like, hey, that's 90s, that's not 2000. Now, one thing, if you have an older one like this, you can direct swap newer mirrors. Now, the reason people would want to do that is they're bigger and they're not spring-loaded like that. So if you're wheeling your XJ and you've got an older one like this, these are a big liability on the trail. So you get the newer ones that fold in and stay in. That's one upgrade you can do. Now, if you spend any time around XJs, you know that a lot of them have cooling issues. And I'm going to give you a quick background on that. I've talked about it before, but when they first put these out, they came with two motors. They came with the 2.5 liter GM straight 4, and they came with the 2.6 liter GM V6. It was a garbage motor, it was underpowered, and it didn't cut it. So what they did after 2 years was they put the big inline 6 4-liter in. Now the problem is this engine bay was never designed for the 4-liter, so it doesn't have enough room around it. These are also reverse flow heads, which means the intake is right over the exhaust. So what you get in XJs are a lot of engine cooling problems and a lot of intake air cooling issues, which does lead to heat soak or vapor lock. This is your fuel rail right here. So what you have is your hot exhaust right down there, essentially cooking your fuel rail. One of the reasons for that is because of how tight the engine bay is, because it was never designed for this motor. The reason I bring all that up is because this has one of the many cooling fan setups you can have in an XJ, and in my opinion, it's the best. The older ones have the small electric fan and then a small clutch fan. Now, if you guys remember the XJ I used to have, I had one big clutch fan driven off the water pump over here. The problem that a lot of people see with those is you see a lot of parasitic loss on the horsepower. If you have a setup like this, you have a nice backup fan. Additionally, if you're crawling around on the trail, amateur hour, doing a lot of low speed stuff, a mech fan is not going to cool enough. So a lot of guys like to have this E fan over here. Additionally, if something goes screwy with your wiring, you can always straight wire an E fan directly to your battery to get off the trail without overheating. All right, here's another XJ. This is a 2-wheel drive 2-door version. We're going to talk about that in a second, but you will notice this has the same setup. It's actually kind of rare to find a couple of these with this mech fan, E fan setup in the junkyard. You see a lot of them that just have the one big mech fan. Now here's the conversation Eric and I always have. Should you go for an E fan? Should you go for a mech fan? What are the positives and the negatives to both? Well, first and foremost, I do love an E fan because if the wiring should fail, your temperature switch or something, you can always hot wire it. The difference is the mech fans move a lot more air, and that's one of the reasons why they gave these mid-year, these are your early 90s. Again, I don't think they put the date on this thing now, but let's see. Based on the seats, hey, this thing used to be red. See, these are slightly newer seats than the other ones, so I'm guessing these are about, this is probably a 95 if I had to guess. The point was, that's why they gave these mid-year ones this dual setup. The late model ones, like your 97 plus XJs, mostly just had one big mech fan driven off the water pump. That was like mine, if you recall. Now the benefit there is if they fail on. meaning when the clutch goes, it doesn't go open, or doesn't fail closed, it fails open. So the fan's just gonna be on all the time. The downside there is parasitic engine loss. You do lose horsepower turning that mech fan. Another downside to a mechanical fan is when your engine is spinning at low RPMs for a long period of time, you're probably not moving enough air over the engine to actually cool it. So if you're building a crawler, you probably don't want a mech fan. You probably want some E-fans. What we're gonna go look at later, another update you can do to these things in the junkyard real cheap. Late model Tauruses. Do you know what years, Eric?
Oh, we're looking at least from a 92 to 96 or 97.
They had dual mech fans that fit very nicely in an XJ engine compartment. I was just talking about how this engine compartment was not designed for this motor. You can see it here, man. You got your header right here, and here's the front of the motor. There's not a lot of room, and there's not a lot of room around it for air to move. Your air box is right here. Now, granted, there's a bunch of garbage in here. Someone's using it for storage, but the reason XJs have cooling and heat soak issues is because of the configuration of the engine bay. And when you're building one, whether it's for a daily driver, a tow rig, a plow rig, an off-road rig, you really want to give some thought to the fans setup. For a daily driver, I think this is a really nice setup. If you're doing heavy duty or you're sitting in traffic, you know, you got yourself covered depending on what it is. Now, with these right here, again, being a 95, oh, this one has fully stationary mirrors. So again, if you're building an off-road rig, those folding ones are nice. These seats are pretty nice, and some of these had a tilting base feature. Now, they're very rare. I don't think we're gonna find one. Hey, what, we got some criminal activity going here? Got a Slim Jim. I don't know that we're going to find one here. I will certainly keep an eye out, but that's another upgrade you can do on these mid-year XJs. Some of them had a tilting base. Wow, this one is severely... Let's, what would Vice Grip do? The test foot? Oh, yeah. That guy's about to crunch right on through. We are returning to Mother Earth Gaia in a big way. Upstate New York claims another one. Now, I guess just this door used to be red. So the rest of the Jeep here. As far as interiors, I don't know that there's a ton you can upgrade from this year to the new ones. You could definitely put the new year seats in. Eric and I were talking about it on the way over. You can actually put WJ seats in an XJ. You do have to modify the track a little bit, but definitely doable. WJ seats are hands down more comfortable, though the most comfortable Jeep seats, ZJ seats. Absolutely. If you have... Now, here's my bummer with ZJ seats. I don't think they look good in a WJ. I'm sorry, but they do look good in an XJ. So if you can find a limited Grand Cherokee from 93 to 98, that's your ZJ, with the big, cushy, pillowy leather seats, pull them bad boys, stick them in your XJ, and ride around town like the fancy pants king that you actually are. Now we're gonna, real quick, since we're at one of these, we're gonna talk about it. There were a number of different axles and gearing setups that they put in these Jeeps. Now, being a two-wheel drive like this is, you're looking at a Chrysler 8 1/4. It's gonna have drum brakes. Now, I don't feel like crawling in there to figure out exactly. Looks pretty gunky, but I can almost guarantee this is going to have 307 gearing. Most of the manuals did, which means if you have a 5-speed and you want to build it into a crawler, it's really, really easy for you to go get an axle out of a stock automatic transmission. That's going to have 355. Now, allegedly some had 373, but they're hard to find. You can get some tow rigs that had a Dana 44 stock. Super rare. If you find one in a junkyard, whether you need it or not, I recommend you pull it. Let's go look at some 97 plus Jeeps so that we can talk about some of the things you can pull off those. Okay, now we were talking about fans for a minute. You saw that Jeep over there had a very tiny mechanical fan, but if you have a larger mechanical fan off the 97 plus, it's a standard duty mechanical fan. Now what we're looking at here is the 5.2 ZJ with the exact same mech fan you're going to find on your 97 to 01 XJ, but this is the HD version. It's a heavier clutch. If you're doing any towing with your XJ and you have the one big water pump driven, see this one's off the water pump as opposed to being over here, you can get one either off Rock Auto, get a new one, or just get one in the junkyard. I'll bet you this one's fine. Good to go. So that's another very inexpensive upgrade you can make that makes a huge difference. Eric actually did it on his 4-liter ZJ, and he went from boiling the thing every time he went up a hill to moving more air. The only difference is it does sound like a school bus coming around the corner.
Get on the gas, that's all you hear. Now
additionally, if you have a ZJ, I was talking about the seats, and this one absolutely has those seats I was talking about. Super comfy. Most of them don't have a giant hole ripped down the middle here, but super comfy seats, and they bolt right in. And if you wanted to, they're electric, 4-way electrics. You can even wire that in. It's not particularly hard. Also, once you get into XJs and WJs, Grand Cherokees in general, your sound system is going to be upgraded. A lot of those parts are definitely switchable into your XJ. Your XJs tend to be more basic. Everything's basic, from the engine components to the suspension components to the sound system to the seats. But Grand Cherokees, especially the ZJ, were built, I mean, they use the same front suspension linkage and everything. In fact, the front sway bar from a V8 ZJ is the exact same sway bar but beefier. That's correct?
Yep, and then the front steering components you can also do.
The front steering components, we're actually going to talk about steering components when we get over to a WJ, but so if you have an XJ, say it's lifted up a few inches and you want some better on-road handling, find yourself a V8 ZJ. This one's got the 5.2, that's what most of them are going to have. Pull the sway bar and you're on your way to having a more civilized on-road experience. Of course, the bolt pattern for your wheels is the same, 5x4.5. The ZJ had better rims. That's all there is to it. Now, I don't know if I'd put these 5-spoke gold rims on an XJ. I don't know how they'd look. That'd be up to you. But certainly if you're looking for some new exciting rim choices, ZJs have the same rim pattern, as do wheel pattern, as do your TJs, as do your YJs. WJs, on the other hand, do not. All right, and now believe it or not, the first generation Jeep Liberty, which is actually called the Jeep Cherokee elsewhere in the world, does have some components you might want for your XJ, namely the rear disc brakes. This right here is a Chrysler 8.25 solid rear axle. That's what they put in all Liberties. Actually, that's not true. Maybe some of them got a D35. I'm not sure. But if you find one of these, most of them had the Chrysler 8.25, which is that right there. If I feel generous, I'll insert a clip on how to tell the difference between a 35 and an 8.25. These disc brakes are a direct swap. So you need to take the brake, the backer plate, all the components, but they will swap right on, and then you can lose your drum brakes, which personally, I like the drum brakes better. You set them once and you're good for like 100,000 miles, but I know a lot of people that don't. I think the only time I would lose my drum brakes on an XJ is if it's like a dedicated highway XJ. If you're doing any kind of towing or off-roading, just keep the drum brakes. But I know a lot of people like the disc brakes. Getting them from a Liberty is an option, and it's super easy, and there's a million of them in the yard. It's no big deal. All right, so here's a good example of your 97 and up. You're gonna have a flat grille. In a lot of cases, it's gonna be a body match, but sometimes it's black, flat on body paint. But the easiest way to tell it is it flat or does it have the little angle in there? Additionally, you're gonna have a lot of body match fender flares and stuff if you're trying to identify it. And then here's an example of the newer 4x4 symbol for 97 up. And then here's a good example of those folding mirrors. Like I told you, they're a direct swap. They're a little bigger. They're a little bit bigger. Some of them were heated, so you might be able to get yourself some heated mirrors on that. But the biggest thing is they fold. So if you're out on the trail or whatever, you can pull these in just like that, and you're less likely to knock them off on a tree. I won't say unlikely. Now we're gonna talk about this more when we get to a Comanche that's over on the other side of the yard, but this whole front clip, the whole nose, can be swapped over. So you will see guys who take from here, actually I think you can even do the doors, but you have to do some modifications to basically turn a pre-97 XJ into a post-97. Now what a lot of people do is they do this on Comanches because it looks particularly good on a Comanche. You get this whole front clip. I might even leave a link to someone who did it. His name is Cherokee Blood MJ on Instagram. He's a guy down in Florida. He doesn't know me, we're not associated with him, but I do follow him, have been following him for years, and he did this swap. I'm pretty sure his Comanche has from the doors up from a 97 plus. So I'll leave that someplace. Go look if you're interested. Certainly an option. Personally, I think it's a little sacrilegious because the new ones are cool, the old ones are cool. Why not just leave them? But some people really like that thing. So definitely something you can do. Swap the hood over, swap the whole thing over. All right, now right here is a good example of the newest, the late model seats. You can see they've got some plastic cladding down below. They are still I do believe there are some limited XJs that had heated leather seats, but for the most part, you're going to have two-way seats here, and then the back, they're going to be manual. But I have seen people swap these into older ones, and I have seen people swap older seats into the new ones. I like these. I think they're just quintessential 90s, not terribly uncomfortable, though I can't suggest enough you find yourself some ZJ seats. While we're here, let's talk about one of the things I hate most about the XJ, and it is the knuckles. I hate the brakes on the XJ. They're goofy and difficult and weak, but thankfully there's a very good solution. If you look at this, and take a real good look. This is a, they didn't put the year, but it's probably about a 2000, if I had to guess. The badging is a great way to tell because they changed the badging so much through the years. Once you get to know this super flat graphite colored badging is always going to be 97 up. But take a look at this guy. We're going to call it a 2000. Here is your track bar. No, that's not your track bar. Here is your tie rod. Okay, take a look at that. Oh, here's your drag link. It's got the track bar that meets in the center there and terminates in these very crazy knuckles with the super weird brake caliper setup. What you can very easily do, this is a WJ right here, probably 03 if I had to guess based on the bumper. What you can do is come over and take these knuckles. These knuckles are a direct swap, and then you get WJ brakes, which are much bigger. I actually have a video on the two different types of WJ brakes. 99 to 01 used TV style, they're kind of trash. 01, late model 01 to 04 used Akebonos. I'm gonna leave a link to that video up there in the corner, but you want the late model ones, they're much better. But look at this track bar. All right, much beefier, and it's crossover steering. What that means is this drag link, it doesn't go to the middle of the track bar. It actually secures to the knuckle, and then there's a separate mounting place down here for the track bar. Additionally, this style knuckle makes it very easy to do over the knuckle steering. That's when you get a tapered bit and you drill this hole out and you move this track bar, or why do I keep calling it a track bar? Amateur hour. You move this tie rod up on top to give yourself more ground clearance. The reason this is doable is that this is a Dana 35 axle and the XJs came with a Dana 35 axle. You literally just come over and you unscrew the nuts from the ball joints here, knock this guy off, take all the steering with you. You've got beefier steering, which if you're putting bigger tires on is almost a must because it's puny. The steering on this is doable on ZJs too, but the steering on XJs and ZJs is puny. I believe you can do this on a TJ also. It's a great upgrade, doesn't cost a lot. If you're doing any kind of modifications or bigger tires on an XJ, I highly recommend find some WJ steering components and throw that stuff in. All right, now another thing that the WJ is great for are these lower control arms. Now the front lower control arms on a WJ are the same length with the same mounting points as the XJ ones. The difference is, and I'm gonna show you the XJ ones in a minute, the WJ ones are one piece. Can you see that? They're solid all the way, and the bigger thing, they bow in. Can you see that? They bow in, so if you put wider tires on, say you put a 10.5-inch tire on maybe a 2-inch lift with stock control arms on an XJ, your tire's gonna rub because the XJ one comes straight across like this. The WJ one dips in. So these are a great upgrade because they're the same size as your stocks, but they're way beefier. They're gonna give you better handling. They're gonna last better off-road, and they've got that clearance for bigger tires. Now, if you come back here to the rear lower control arms on the WJ, these are about 2 inches longer. Now, they don't have that nice clearance bump, but being longer, you could build yourself a nice set of longer short arms with these, and then maybe some JK upper control arms. But WJ control arms are a great upgrade because they're beefier. Can you see this is all one piece of metal, nice and beefy. Let's go look at what the XJ one looks like. Now here's the XJ one. I know it's hard because it's sitting on a tire, but can you see? Oh, let's see if see how it's just a piece of channel? This is all hollow. They flex quite a lot. When you're turning, you'd be surprised how much these can flex. Now, one thing you can do is just weld chunks of metal in there to take up that slack. But why not just go to the junkyard and for 20 bucks, get yourself some WJ control arms? You can see they're way beefier and they got that nice bump in. So if you put wider tires in, you're not gonna rub. And then again, the rear, this obviously doesn't have rear control arms, but if you take the rear control arms from a WJ, you get about 2 inches of extra length in the front, which depending on what lift setup you're doing, could help you, depending on what your needs are. The beauty of the XJ is in how easy it is to what they call bastard lift, which is when you just take random parts. I can't think of another vehicle outside of a pickup truck that's easier to bastard lift. You can come to the yard, and we're gonna talk about this in a minute, and just grab some leaf springs out of damn near anything. The only thing that you really can't jimmy jam or or factory fabricable are springs. So you get yourself some 2, 3, 4, 6-inch springs, and then the rest you can do in the junkyard. We're going to talk about that in a minute. First, Eric's going to talk about some more engine upgrades. All right, now we talked before about kind of the configuration of this inline engine with the reverse flow head. What that means, again, is you've got your exhaust manifold down here, then your intake manifold up here, and the reverse flow head part of it comes, the intake, it breathes all on one side. So the air's going in and coming out on one side. And then up here is your fuel rail, and that leads to a number of heat soak issues where the liquid fuel in the rail or in the lines vaporizes. You get vapor lock and your engine doesn't want to start. Now, one of the ways to combat that is to put 4-port upgraded injectors in it. Now, in addition to helping with vapor lock, in my opinion, it's one of the best mods you can do on a 4-liter for extra power, extra miles per gallon. We've got other videos talking about that, but if you want to, you can go into the junkyard. And what can you do, Eric?
You can get them from a 95 to 97 Dodge, Plymouth, Neon, or Breeze in the 2.0 engine format.
So that's the first, no, that's the second generation Neon, right?
This is called EV1 injector.
Yeah.
You're looking for 703s, and this is from 87 to 98 in the 4.0s.
Gotcha.
So you go to Dodge Neon, you're gonna need 2 of them because you're only little 4 cylinders. 4. You're gonna need 6 injectors from them, from the 95, 97 2.0s, and take those out and put them in.
They're the exact same size, the exact same shape, with the exact same connector. The only difference is their PSI rating, and they've got amateur hour.
Got it.
They've got 4 ports for a better spray pattern, and better atomization. And then I believe the PSI is different, but everything else is exactly the same. It's a direct swap. Eric and I have both done this on numerous 4-liters. Yep. It's probably one of the most common swaps. Yep. Additionally, you can just buy them. You can just buy the Bosch ones.
Rock Auto, eBay. But for 99 and 01, you're going to need different ones.
Yeah. Those you can get out of a SV Mustang, right?
You can get Ford ones. You need adapters for the wiring plugs.
Oh, okay.
For direct swaps to this wiring plug, they're the EV6 type injector, and you need the 784s. Again, from the Dodge, Plymouth, Neon, Breeze situation.
But that's like the SRT4 version, right? Model.
No, it's a regular 2.4 liter 98 to 01.
Cool.
And those model formats, any of the 2.4s are pretty much that year with the 2.4.
So if you got more questions on that, by all means, leave us a comment down there in the squawk boxes, or you can always email us, dndoffroad@gmail.com. It can be a little confusing, but it's actually totally simple. There are a few ways to get new injectors for your 4-liter. There are people that sell refurbished ones. That's where we usually get them because they're the best quality without breaking the bank. You can buy them brand new off Rock Auto, EV1s or EV6s, depending on which ones you need, or you can just go to the junkyard and bum around and find them out of a Neon. But any way you decide to go with it, it is a great mod. If you mix that with a larger throttle body, which I'll talk about at the end, remind me, Eric, and a little bit of an opened up exhaust, and you will wake the 4-liter up quite a bit. Now, another thing that we've talked about before, speaking of adding power, it's not horsepower, it's electrical power. One of the videos we did years ago at this point was how to swap your stock 90 amp alternator for, what is it, a 130?
You go to 130 or a 160, and depending on what year, it's different for Dodges when you pull them.
Essentially, you're getting one out of a V8 Dodge truck. Yeah. And the alternator's down there.
Yeah,
I'm short, so I'm not gonna be able to reach it. We'll leave a link to the video that we did when we swapped Eric's on his plow Jeep. He took out the 90, he put a 160 in. He runs a big winch on there, and it made all the difference in the world. So if you got an off-road rig and you're running a 90 amp alternator, you're just asking for trouble. You're asking to be on the trail and have that thing go. God forbid you're running a big 12,000 pound Smitty built. You're overworking your 90. You're killing your battery. We'll leave a link up to that one, but that's another one you find in the junkyard. You go to Dodges with the 5.2 or the 5.9. The bolt pattern's the same, and depending on your Jeep, you may have to swap the pigtail. But again, go look at that video, card up in the corner. Let's move on to, let's talk suspension, because that's what everybody wants to know. How do you lift an XJ on the cheap? Let's go do it. Alrighty, now if you want to lift your XJ, you are in luck. There are a number of options from the junkyard, and your best bet is going to be a V8 ZJ. Now the ZJ uses the same front suspension as the XJ. We can look down here. You've got that same dainty little tie rod with the knot crossover. What do they call that? Y suspension, Y steering. But the springs, while they're the same size, they're not all the same spring rate. Now, my understanding is a stock 4-liter ZJ springs might get you like a 1/2 inch. Probably not at this point if you're getting them out of the junkyard. But a V8 like this one's got the big 5.2.
Yep, you're right.
Big 5.2 in her, and because the 5.2 is heavier, they had to put heavier spring rate springs in. If you throw those into an XJ, you're probably going to get 1 to 2 inches. And the reason I say that is it depends on how beat your suspension was, and it depends on how beat the ones you're getting are. But if you were to go on Rock Auto and buy brand new ones, you can probably count on about 2 inches over stock. Again, a V8 ZJ spring, exact same spring size, no modification, fits right in there. And that's about what you can do. If you want to go any higher than 2 inches, you're going to have to add pucks or get some springs. Who, Buddy Buck, I will tell you what, life is hard and harder if you're stupid. We got a bit of a technical difficulty with this next clip. It seems some jabroni snuck up on me in the yard, changed the camera into time-lapse mode, which is a bummer because the ZJ that we found, there's a lot to talk about on it. I promise you we will get back to our regular scheduled program in a minute. Bear with me. The whole reason we stopped at this ZJ, aside from the killer hood, which is a custom Joker Harley Quinn unit, custom paint job, all sorts of different rainbow colors on this Jeep, the bigger deal was the suspension. Now, this ZJ had been modified. It had about 2-inch lift springs in it with 2-inch pucks on top of it. The real news was, though, it had a drop track bar bracket. And what I was saying was, if you want to do these mods to your XJ, if you want to lift it above, say, 2 inches, 3 inches, you're definitely going to want to consider stuff like a drop track bar. It's going to help keep your geometry in place. It's going to help prevent death wobble. It's going to help prevent premature wear of your other suspension components. But that kind of stuff can be expensive. So keep an eye out in the yard. The unit that we found on this ZJ, even though the rest of the ZJ was a total hoopty, though don't get me wrong, I absolutely respect it, and I would have whipped that thing all day, every day. But she was. I mean, she was fabric cobbled together by some monkeys with a toolbox, just like Eric and I, who were clearly on a budget, but they splurged on a nice drop track bar. So that, a little find like that in the junkyard can really complete your build. And again, the point I was trying to drive home here was that the front suspension and steering components on an XJ are almost identical to that you find in a ZJ, to the point where the lift springs and the pucks in that ZJ would have fit without any trouble into an XJ. And it would have given you quite a bit of lift, actually. So that had about 4 inches of lift. You would have gotten 4 or 5 in your XJ there. Then you go and address some springs in the rear, which we're going to deal with later on in this video, and all of a sudden you have a very inexpensively lifted up XJ. So the point being, if you're going for the bastard lift, if you're going for the junkyard lift, don't just be looking at your XJs. Make sure you're peeking in at your TJs and definitely your ZJs, because all those components are going to match. We can now leave this clip. I'm super bummed that this one didn't come out, because this was a very interesting ZJ. Eric and I had a little bit of fun with it. Had the Cracker Cartel sticker on the windshield there. I would have liked to meet the two driveway monkeys that fabric cobbled this bad boy together. Without further distraction, whatever, let's get back to our regular scheduled program. Alrighty, I was hoping to find one but couldn't, but some XJs do come with factory fog lights. They'd be right here. Now, the fog lights themselves are not where the big money is, but the big money is in the factory fog light switch. And that is going to be on your XJs right here. There'll be a fog light switch right there. So if you want a nice clean way to put auxiliary lights in, whether it's fog lights or a light bar, you can come and get this switch, you know, one of these panels that has that switch in there. And then all you need up in here in the power distribution box, you can look at the cover to figure out where it is, but you need to add a fuse and you need to add a relay. But then you've got this circuit down here that's wide open, and the beauty is it's tucked up in there right now, but all XJs have the wiring already there. They use the same harness for everything. Now, I don't feel like pulling this all apart, but trust you me, you pull down this splash guard, and in there's going to be some wiring, and then you're good to go. Now, there's actually some interior stuff you can get from a WJ, not just the seats, though. Yes, the seats. These seats can be put into an XJ. You just have to modify the bracket a little bit, though. Again, I don't necessarily recommend that. If you're going to swap the seats, either put different XJ seats in or put ZJ seats, because super comfortable. But you can swap this steering wheel in. The cruise control will work, assuming you have cruise control to begin with. I think it's a better looking steering wheel for the 97 and up. I don't know that I'd put one in an 84 to 96 because it might look anachronistic, but still pretty cool. Additionally, what you can do, if you have the auto dim mirror, you have to do some wiring to get power to it, but it's just, you know, 2 wires. You can swap in an auto dim mirror. For me, auto dim mirror is a must. So if I ever daily an XJ again, which I will be putting some of that in. Is it 40? Yeah, it's 1540. It's the 4-liter starter pack. Listen, I don't recommend putting 1540 in any motor except the 4-liter. For some reason, it's okay in the 4-liter. Also, this has like Boston speakers. These are all KO'd, but I wonder if that one's any good. Yeah, so a lot of this stuff is swappable. Can swap your steering wheel in on a 97 and up. Your cruise control will work. I think Project Dan actually did that. If you can find a what am I thinking of? Oh, the Overland. Overland WJs have the greatest steering wheel. And then that, you know, the auto dim I think is really nice. The seats, of course. Alrighty, now just so that nobody can say we didn't pull anything today, I actually do need something for my WJ, my 4.7 daily, and it's this guy right here. Let me grab her out of there, if you don't mind. I just want to show the people what we're talking about here. This little diffuser, it's part of your PCV plumbing. The 4.7 has some of the worst PCV plumbing ever, and it's something I recommend. Martin Build actually has a video where he fixes that problem. They fixed it on the 08 and up, I believe. You can fix it on these, but here's the long and the short of it. When I go to do my oil, I pull this off, I pull this out, I put it right there, and then I promptly forget about it. I can't tell you how many times I've put this back on without that, and I finally lost mine. So I need to do one of these. If anybody else is like me and they're looking for one of these, let me know, and I'll try to grab you one next time we're here. This is probably gonna be $1 here. And it is necessary. It will cut down on sludge in your motor. It kind of, it's for routing of your PCV. Anyway, now you can't say we didn't pull anything. Last stop is going to be Chevy's. What? I thought this was an XJ video. That's right, let's go get an S10. All right, so just to revisit it real quick, what we're looking at here is a Ram 2500 with the big 5.2 Magnum, and here is where you're gonna find your upgraded alternator. This is a 160 amp alternator. Ooh, wow.
It actually looks pretty
That
good.
one actually spins real nice. Probably new, but that's a direct swap into your 4-liter. You may or may not need to do some electrical swapping the pigtail, but that's really it. Again, there'll be a link to a video up in the corner if you're interested in swapping your alternator, but this is how easy it is, man. And this one, I mean, shoot, if one of us needed it, that's got a little squeak. Squeak, squeak, squeak. All right, now we're going to Chevy World. I swear, we're actually going this time. I lied to you fine people. I said we were going and we're not. There's one more upgrade that you can do, and of course this truck doesn't. Yep, yes it does. Actually, it's a perfect view. Dodge Dakota, which this is not, steering boxes are an upgrade for your XJ, your ZJ, and your WJ. They're the same Saginaw style steering box. They got the same mounting points, but you can swap them in. They're beefier. Now, if you pull one from the junkyard and it's already loosey-goosey, you're not really helping yourself. So you really got to pray on whether or not you want to buy a used one, buy a refurbished one maybe off Rock Auto, but that's another upgrade you can do. If you're putting 35s on your XJ, I highly recommend you consider upgrading your steering box. Either get a redhead, which is expensive as heck, or go get one out of a Dirge. The dirty old Dirge will give you one, no big deal. Now we're going to Chevy World. Come hell or high water, I promise. We're on our way to Chevy World, so I'm not breaking my promise, but here's another great one. You see this all the time in the junkyard. I don't know why, but people don't take their spacers with them. Now, I know a lot of people don't like spacers. As long as they're hub-centric, I don't personally have an issue with them. Something interesting here is that someone took the fronts and not the back, so these are probably welded on with that orange Loctite or something. But the point is, you can do a full build straight up out of the yard here. As long as they're hub-centric, no big deal. So you want to space yours out a little bit. You want to get some 12-inch wides to put on there. Go find you some spacers, because they're not cheap, you know? I mean, not overly expensive, but just illustrating that point. Anything else on this ZJ worth having? Someone took the 2 fronts, but not the 2 backs. I don't know why, but they did. No big deal. Moving on. What's this say? If you eat it, drink it, or smoke it, agriculture produced it. Alrighty, friends, this is what we were looking for. This is a Blazer based off the S10 pickup truck, and this is what you're going to want. Well, one of the things you're going to want to lift your XJ. These leaves are the same width as your XJ leaves. So what you do is you come over here and you can take any number of these leaves to add a leaf to your XJ. It's what they call the bastard lift. I believe Bleepin' Jeep did one. Oh man, was it the black zombie Jeep, the one with like the grates on the front? He did the bastard lift. I did it on my XJ that I had when I started the channel. Yeah, there's actually a video on that if you want to see it. And it's really simple. You just take as many leaves and you keep mixing and matching leaves until you get the lift you want. Now I was using it just to fix the sag. Old XJ springs sag. Even when there's nothing in the back, if you got a 20-year-old XJ, the ass end's dragging on the ground. It's just the way they go. But if you add like 2 S10 springs, all of a sudden you've got a nice level ride. If you add more than that, now you've got a lifted ride. So you get your Junkyard ZJ V8 springs and the 2-inch pucks for the front that you bought off a ZJ or an XJ in the yard, and you throw 2 or 3 springs in from an S10 Blazer, and you're pretty good to go. What are you doing?
I found projector lights.
Oh, I was like, what is he doing? Now, is the S10 the only one you can do this with? No. Ranger springs will also fit, and Dakota springs will also fit, but the S10 ones are the easiest, and they've got the best sizes as far as length to work with the ZJ. So if you can find an S10 or an S10 Blazer, this is an S10 blade. It's based off the S10, y'all understand that, and you pull them out. I would recommend taking the bottom, what do they call that? The load spring? What is the flat one at the bottom called? This one, the one that stays straight, because it's much beefier than the one in your XJ, especially if you're trying to fix the sag. And then maybe take like this one. This right here, I think, is the one that I added to my existing XJ leaf spring pack to level it. Now you hear about people that kind of add this whole thing in, and then they get 6 inches of lift, you know? And then after that, there's really only one thing to think about, and it's brake lines. If you lift your thing 4-6 inches, you're going to need new soft brake lines, but you are in luck. Most of these pickup trucks out here are going to have brake lines that will work. Specifically, mid-90s GM stuff is the same thread pattern as your XJ, so play around with that. Additionally, 80s Dodge trucks are going to have, so if you can get a D100 or something, they've got the same style brake hoses, but they're longer. So if you lift yourself 6 inches, you may want to go get a rear brake soft line out of a, I don't know, C150 or something, whatever have you, like this guy right here. Right in here, I believe, yeah, it goes all the way up, is a heck of a lot longer than your XJ one, but it's got all the same fittings. So if you lift yourself up 6 inches, this may be an option. Now, different trucks, different years, different models are gonna have different configuration brake hoses. So play around, figure out what you need for your lift size. You know, maybe you need it off this one, maybe you need it off that one. But that's a great way to save some money, because new upgraded soft lines or braided lines are not cheap, and that's the kind of stuff that can really ding a budget when you're trying to build it easy. If you've got, you know, daddy's credit card, or you just make $100,000 a year and you like building XJs, fine, man. Don't listen to none of my suggestions. But if you're like Eric and I, family men who have one job to pay the bills, and then, you know, in your spare time you're trying to do cool stuff out there in the garage, the only way you can probably lift up your XJ is through methods like this, or just modify it in general. And the beauty of the XJ, and I think one of the reasons that so many people love them, is because they're so customizable. You can buy a stock XJ and make it whatever you want. Literally, I've had them that are snowplow rigs, I've had them that are tow rigs, I've had them that are lifted up 6 inches off-road rigs. You can have them that are camper rigs. I mean, whatever you want. And then on top of that, they've got that amazing classic styling, which at this point is classic, you know, kind of square looking. They still have the seal beam headlights and all that. And then on top of all that, you get the 4-liter, which, I mean, listen, anything with a 4-liter is okay in my book. I love the 4-liter. Now, a few other things that we didn't find in the yard today that are upgrades. Shackles from an MJ, which is the Comanche, will give you 1.5 inches of lift. So if you were to find an MJ, you could put those shackles on. That's going to give you 1 inch of lift. If you mix that with a S10, they call it the Bastard Pack, I think I kind of mentioned that, a couple leaves, add a leaf, now maybe you've got a 4-inch lift real easily. New shackles, new leaves there. Additionally, like I said, that Taurus fan, it kind of looks like this. Not really. I mean, this is it. We're in the GM world here, but it's kind of a setup like this. But it links up real well with the existing XJ radiator. There's 1.5 million threads on that. I'm not even going to go into more detail. If you Google any of these things, you will find information ad nauseum for making it better. Another one that I was looking for that I didn't see, the old original first generation 84 Dodge Caravan has a plate style transmission cooler that is great. If you're running an off-road rig, you're going to want a trans cooler, and the plate style are much more durable. You can buy one from Hayden, but you can get one in the yard really inexpensively. The point being, XJs are one of the most customizable vehicles. We love them. They are getting a little harder to find now. They're getting rare, and they're getting, what's even more of a bummer, they're getting expensive. When I was first starting driving, you could get a decent XJ for 500 bucks, relatively low miles, and just run the thing. Now, for $2 you can barely get one that's not rotted out with 200K on it. So if you have one, hold on to it. If you can, don't ruin it in some guy's field. That's the bigger issue, you know, like muscle cars and stuff like that. Yes, they're hard to find, but at least they don't lend themselves to getting destroyed in a cornfield. Whereas XJs, man, there's one of them getting flipped over and taken off the road every day. There's probably some guy right now totaling an XJ, wrapping it around a tree in a cornfield or some other thing. So we are officially part of the XJ Conservation Corps, and we'd like to recruit you to do the same. I will say this video is a direct, not a direct response. I wanted to make this, but the reason we decided to make it now was Uncle Tony, one of our absolute favorite Mopar guys. He's got himself a little XJ itch going on right now. He started a collection, and he was actually nice enough to watch a couple D&E in the Garage videos, and he called us out and he said, hey man, if you like XJs, go watch these guys. And he's not wrong. I'm not saying I'm right all day every day, but we certainly do have enough content on Jeeps and XJs. So thank you, Uncle Tony, for the shout out. If you like Mopars or muscle cars or anything that turns gas into noise, go check out Uncle Tony's Garage. This dude knows more about carbureted motors than, he's forgotten more than I could ever hope to know. And I think it's awesome he's getting into Jeeps. He understands now. He gets it, man. XJs with the 4-liter, it's a disease, it's a sickness, I can tell you. So we're gonna leave it here. I'd love to know which of these mods you guys knew about, which of them were new to you, which of them have you done, which of them would you hope to do, and which ones did we forget? Because I could probably research for 1.5 years and I wouldn't find all the factory junkyard mods you can do on an XJ. Am I right, Eric?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll bet we covered 10% of them,
yeah,
if we're lucky. So leave us that comment down there in the squawk boxes. If we get enough suggestions, we will part 2 this thing. I have no problem. I'll come back out here. Dare me to come back to the junkyard is what I'm saying.
Maybe we'll start mounting them on a junkyard XJ
exactly,
to show you.
Right? Hey, we are always in the market for a cheap XJ because I haven't had one in about 3 years now, and I'm itching to have another one. So if you got a comment, like I said, down there in the squawk boxes. If you like the video, that's just common sense. Subscribe to the channel. Maybe go check out our website, monkeywithatoolbox.com. It's hot, and we have a family party to get to. So we're going to sign off here.
Yep.
As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.